But we're inside the British Motor Museum. Welcome to Old Classic Car again. And we have all manner of interesting things, but my eye is particularly drawn to this up here, because this shows the production line for Morrises in the early 1930s. In the garage at home we've got our little 1932 Morris Minor, and it would have come down a production line very, very similar to that, possibly even that production line. Wow. See all the guys, very manual, lots of crafts in evidence there. You see the gravity fuel tank, the fuel feed down there into the carburettor on that particular car. In the days before fuel pumps were invented and rear-mounted tanks, the tanks would be on the scuttle and you'd rely on good old gravity to do the fuel feed for you, and there's a lot to be said for simple things like that. Anyway, let's carry on and have a quick look around here. A Ford Model T, one of the brass rad cars. Unfortunately, because we're in a proper museum, many of the cars have information sheets, so we can fill in my many gaps of knowledge. So this is a 1912 Model T Torpedo, the second oldest British built Ford. Wow, the second oldest surviving British built Ford. Well, 1905 Vauxhall. I must confess, veteran cars I know very little about. This is a 7-stroke 9 horsepower, the first Luton built model. Of course, Vauxhall is synonymous with Luton in particular. By complete contrast, a very, very late example of the MGB GT. One of the very last, if not the last perhaps. There we go, 1980 MGB GT LE, last of the line and the last Abingdon MG. So not just the last MGB, the last Abingdon built MG. This came off the assembly line 22nd of October 1980, the last MGB to be produced. It's great that that survived and it's been preserved here down at Gaydon. I've been here before, but the exhibitions do change around, cars do move around, some cars go into store and others come out. I think this is this the first or the oldest Morris Mini 621 AOK. I've seen photographs of Alec Isigonis, the designer, stood with this particular car. The first production Mini Minor. The Mini was launched 26th of August 1959. This is the first Morris badged Mini, left the Cowley factory 8th of May 1959. For a while it was the company's press car, remained in Morris hands before becoming part of the museum's collection, where it's affectionately called AOK. Top speed 72 miles an hour. There you go, the oldest Morris badged Mini. And here we've got a Series 1 E-Type. Series 1 fixed head coupe 1963, and Rolls-Royce Shadow 1. So we're just in the entrance to the main museum building here, and over here, alongside this motoring cinema, continuous showing of motoring features, open daily from 10:45. Let's go and have a look, see what's playing today. I love all this recreated ticket kiosk and so on. Careless talk costs lives. Let's have a quick look, see what we're watching.
Such as taking the farmer's wife and friends to the local shop. But the spirit of adventure is never far away. These station wagons were fitted out for an Oxford and Cambridge University Far Eastern expedition. Extra equipment such as water cans.
Great stuff. Not just cars, but look at this magnificent motor mower. I do have a bit of a soft spot for old mowers. We used to have an Atco Standard of the 1920s until just a few years ago. But this is another league, the size of this. An 1898 Greens lawn mower. Designed to be pulled by a pony via chains to the handles. Good grief. What an amazing survivor that is. And around the corner from the cinema we have this beautifully recreated garage scene. This is very similar to the layout that they've got down at Bewley. If you've not seen the video I did of the Bewley National Motor Museum, please check that one out when you're finished here. here at Gaydon there are also some magnificent displays of cars, and here we've got an early short rad Ford Model Y of about 1932 or 33, something like that. The later cars had the longer radiator, which required a dip in the bumper to enable the starting handle to go through the front. It's a lovely two-door car, super original. That looks so original, and all this old equipment, spare parts, oil cans. I know someone who would like those. 2-gallon petrol cans at the top up there, Pratt's cans, bit of everything. Of course, many of the garages that were around in the 1930s, they actually started out as blacksmith shops, and then as people gradually moved away from horses to the powered motor car and motorcycle, so little workshops designed to work on these particular vehicles turned up, and were, like I say, but there was such a vibe of blacksmithing still for many years in workshops just like this. Oh, that's great. Oh, there we are. 1933 Ford Model Y.
Bye.
Right, here we are in the main display area. It's a public day today, it's a Saturday. And there's all sorts of cars, and there are quite a lot of special one-off cars here, including this design proposal for an estate version of the Rover SD1. They never actually put one of these into production. You can see they're obviously thinking along those lines for quite some time, and I think several of these cars were built. It's just amazing that these have survived. So many of these funny little oddball experimental cars. More often than not nowadays they just get scrapped as soon as their sort of development work is over. But quite a few of them did escape. The old MGB that we had until not that long ago was a factory development car, and that was used here at Gaydon when MG and British Leyland had their development track just over the way there outside. I think, is it Jaguar or Aston Martin use it now? But yeah, that SD1 is quite a handsome looking car, and it's kind of a shame they never put that into production. I love the way these have been done as if they were giant dinky toys, these replicas of the dinky toy boxes scaled up with the real cars themselves on the top of the prototype up there, the 1964 Mini based, the MG Mini ADO 34. Again, if there's any of these particular cars you want to research the history of in depth, please do so. Here we've got ADO 70. Another classic case of what might have been. That in particular, I think, is a very sweet little car. That could have been a replacement maybe for the Austin Healey Sprite Mark 1. There's the MG EXE up there. Looks like someone sectioned an Austin Maestro. What I love about museums like this is everywhere you look there are just interesting things. So you've got the Maestro here, and behind it, part of the Montego. I think there was quite a crossover of parts between the two. Here we have the Road Rover. This was a prototype from the mid-1950s, and it just shows that even back then, Rover, or Land Rover, were thinking along the lines of producing a slightly more comfortable, more refined version of the Land Rover, which of course the Land Rover, the Series 1 Land Rover, first broke cover and went on sale in 1948, and this is from 1955, the Road Rover here. So this is an early idea of what they were thinking of, which would eventually, I guess, become the Range Rover. The Range Rover of the late 1960s, that was the comfy version. So you got the Land Rover for bouncing across fields and through muddy rivers. Then you've got the slightly plusher version for use on the road more, and that's what was the thinking behind this. You know, explore the concept of a new model which will be positioned between the car range, i.e. the P4s, and the Land Rover models, so some sort of like a bit of an interim car between the two. This is the only survivor of the 12 Series 1 prototypes. What a treat that survived. So a quick look round the back. You certainly see the way they were thinking, can't you? Very, very sturdy hinges. What do we have here? This is the Gutty, the Nuffield Gutty, quarter-ton military prototype, 1947. Of course, the Austin Champ would go into production, and that looked kind of similar to this, but a little bit more refined. This is a lot boxier, much more like a Jeep, in fact, this is. So a quick look here. If you like oddball cars, especially oddball British cars, then this is the place to come. Next to the Nuffield Gutty of 1947, we've got the Austin Ant of 1969, another proposal that ultimately didn't really lead anywhere. Next to that, the Austin Mini Moke, which of course was produced for many, many years, both by BMC and later in Portugal these were built.
Concept, and then they ended up with
Now, Vauxhall, the XVR Concept. This is another car that I've got photos of from back in the day over on the Old Classic Car website on the main site. So if you've not visited there in a while, please check that out when you're done here. But this is the XVR. There are some photos of this. I thought it was silver originally. There's an original press photo or two of this on the website. One of 3 prototypes built. Only one was designed to be fully functional, and only this mock-up survives. It took 5 months to design and build. Certainly a wild looking car. So many interesting cars here at Gaydon. We'll try and walk around as many of them as we can. Okay, next up we have a fastback version of the Triumph TR7. Of course, the TR7 was initially launched just as a 2-door fixed head coupe. The drop head coupe version will come along later, but when it first came out, it was believed that there'd be no market for open-top cars thanks to American safety regulations and so on, although they did ease throughout the 1970s, and they did put a drop-head version of the TR7 into production, but this fastback version, sadly, never made it into production. So a quick look at this. This is the Triumph Lynx prototype. So when Triumph began to design a TR7, they intended to include a fastback coupe version codenamed Lynx. There we go. Lengthened wheelbase, rear seats fitted. The TR7 panels were restyled to give different side feature lines, fitted with a Rover V8 engine, just like the TR8. So this was seen as a successor to the Stag, which had been discontinued in 1977. Sadly, this project was shelved. So, would that have sold well, do you think? Would that have been a good thing to see go into production? The TR7 Heritage at the front is very clear, but as you go along the sides you can see it's a very, very different shape, especially as you get around the back here. Much longer, like I say, a longer wheelbase, huge safety bumpers. But that's actually quite a good looking car. What a shame. When you see some of the imagination that was in the design studios of British Leyland, it's such a shame that there wasn't the resources and the money and so on to put a few of these into production, because you'd have to think that they would have sold reasonably well. What a bonkers car that Vauxhall is. Of course, one of the problems perhaps with British Leyland back in the day was you had rival cars competing with each other within the same family of products. So you've got the Triumph Spitfire at the top there with a 1500cc Triumph engine, and below that the 1500cc Midget with the same engine. And these were rivals in the same showroom. Obviously one was MG and the other was Triumph, and there was a lot of brand loyalty. Triumph buyers wouldn't buy MGs and vice versa. And both designs, I mean, these are sort of what, late 1970s, 1980 examples, somewhere around there. Well, these can trace their roots back way back to the early 1960s. Incredibly, it was still in production, revised and revamped a little bit, but yeah, it's just incredible that these aging designs are still in production around about 1980, and they were competing with each other in the same British Leyland dealerships. It's incredible, really. Back to oddballs, prototypes and one-offs, and we have this 1967 Rover. And if we peer through that plexiglass little hump on the back there, we can see this has a rear-mounted V8 engine. What a special little car that is. You can see some Rover P6 wheel trims there. Oh, look at those hatches in the roof as well. Okay. 1967 Rover Elvis P6 BS mid-engined sports prototype. Again, we've got a bit of history here, so pause the video if you want to have an in-depth read of this one. Look at that, and slightly offset Rover V8 engine. This was to enable a single seat to be fitted in the back, and there was ample boot space and good all-round visibility. Sadly, the car is a one-off. The project was cancelled as part of a rationalisation programme after the BL merger in 1968. What a shame these cars didn't get into production. Of course, maybe not all of them are viable, but surely some of these cars could have made it into production. Now here's a little oddball here. This is the Crompton Leyland of 1972 electric car. Prototype based on standard mini parts. Styling by Michelotti of Italy. He designed the Triumph Spitfire and Herald, the Vitesse and so on. Electric traction and storage batteries were by Crompton. 24 lead acid batteries. 2 3.9 horsepower motors, maximum speed of 33 miles an hour. Doesn't that sound a bit like that new Citroen Amy that's come out? That does about 30 miles an hour, doesn't it? Something like that. Now here were Leyland and Crompton experimenting with something just like that in 1972. And we've got BMC 9X here. This was a proposal for a new Mini, slightly enlarged, a bit bigger than the Mini. The hatchback prototype of 1969. I suppose you could argue that this eventually, another 10 years or so later, became the Metro. Well, obviously, even in the late 1960s, they were thinking of doing a more practical, updated version, slightly larger version of the good old Mini. And sadly, it came to nothing, but yeah, big hatchback on the back of this one, making it a lot more practical, really roomy in the back there as well. What a treat that all these cars are here together and we can have a look at them. And here we've got the ECV3. We'll have to look at this one. I've seen it before, but I can't remember anything about this one at all. Energy conservation vehicle. 1935 Morgan Super Sports here, a little three-wheeler. Some had Jap engines. This has the matchless units hanging out the front. So twin cylinder, single carburettor. There's a single carb there. 2 float chambers. And there's the link to the 2 cylinders there. We've seen many Triumph TR6s, TR4s, 5s and 6s on the channel at various events that we go to, and very rarely do you see them perched underneath the Midget and a Spitfire. I remember seeing this race prepared V12 E-Type many years ago, possibly at the Pageant of Power or somewhere like that, maybe the Goodwood Festival of Speed, in fact, quite a long time ago. But the sound from those huge open exhausts of that V12 engine is something you don't forget in a hurry. There is actually a video elsewhere on the channel of an XJS with the open pipes running at the Pageant of Power, and that sounds like nothing else. If you like fruity sounding engines, go and check that video out. Now we're in gas turbine corner. Rover spent many years researching the practicality and the viability of gas turbine propulsion for road cars. But other than a few prototypes and a race car which competed at Le Mans, it didn't really come to anything, sadly. Here's one of their prototypes here, one of their research vehicles. Again, have a quick look at the information sheet and you can get the full SP on what exactly it is we are looking here. 1956 Rover T3 gas turbine coupe. Of course, the Rover P6 was, the design was intended to have gas turbine power. If you look at this car here, thus modified, a very modified P6, you can see how close they must have got to putting this car into production. The fact that they've got a car here which looks so much like a P6, albeit with a gas turbine engine hidden away beneath the bonnet. And what a stylish and advanced car that is. People have a pop at a lot of the British car manufacturers of the 1960s and 70s for being a bit predictable, but there were plenty of ideas floating around in the back rooms and the back offices. It's just a shame that more of them didn't see the light of day. This is the 1961 Rover T4 gas turbine saloon, and there's a bit of the history on it. Up on the wall here we've got a painting of the Rover BRM, the gas turbine powered race car at Le Mans. Jackie Stewart steers the Rover BRM turbine coupe around Tertre Rouge, Le Mans 24 hours 1965. When the big Dodge truck was away being restored all those years ago, for quite a long time that car was in the same workshop. And I did actually get some video footage of it running, and the sound was just incredible. Absolutely incredible car to see running, that was. If the footage is up to it, I may well pop that onto the channel at some point. But yeah, that was an incredible car. Graham Hill also raced that. And there's the different front. That's an alternative front that they had for the Rover BRM car. Yeah, this road car would have been pretty spectacular. Now, what's this over here? I've been to Gaydon many times and seen several of these cars over the years, but I don't remember seeing this. What is that? What car is that? Well, hopefully this sheet here will tell us more. So this is T3, the Rover T3, the gas turbine base unit. So a number of cars were built, all with T identifications, T2, 3, 4, whatever. So this is the third turbine car. Again, how has that survived? It's incredible that that is still with us after all these years. Back to classic Jaguars, and here we have the Jaguar XK120C, or the C-Type as it was more often referred to. Beautiful car of the early 1950s, designed very much with competing at Le Mans in mind, and did very well in that particular job. Next to it, the successor to the beautiful C-Type. Let's just have a look at the front, because they really are wonderful. I know it is a bit corny to say so, but they almost do look feline, these particular Jaguars. Just stunning, wind cheating shape, that's what that was all about. Here we've got another D-Type. This is a short-nosed D-Type. You had the long nose and the short nose. The long nose cars tended to have a wing on the back, like a fin behind the driver's head, but the short noses didn't have that. This is a 1954 D-Type. It's a factory prototype, no less. Ooh, Interesting bit of history with this one. Top speed 162 miles an hour. What an incredible car. That's the old saying, if it looks right, it is right. I think this backs up that particular claim. It's just like an aircraft cockpit in here, all exposed aluminium, exposed welds everywhere on the transmission tunnel, etc, etc. Gauges hidden away under there. What a beautiful car, and this one's still very active. It's been at several Goodwood Festival of Speeds over the years. We've got stickers here from 2011 through to 2014. Now in the 1960s, Jaguar were thinking of returning to Le Mans, and they produced this, the one-off XJ13. This was tested extensively by Norman Jewis, the Jaguar test driver, who was responsible for developing these two beauties here. And in the 60s he was tasked with helping develop this, the mighty XJ13. I think it was at Myra that Norman Jewis was driving this, probably pressing on for 180 miles an hour, and they crashed it. And it destroyed the car, but somehow he walked away from it and the car was rebuilt. And sadly, Jaguar never raced this particular car at Le Mans. And I think, if I'm right in saying, this has the 4-cam version of the V12 engine. Of course, the V12 engine that went into the road cars, the E-Type, the XJS and the XJ Saloons, was a single cam per bank, so twin cam, but it's a V engine, so 1 cam on top of each of the V's, parts of the V. This was going to be a twin cam per bank, so 4-cam version of the V12 engine. But I think for the road car purposes, they were thinking of putting a 4-cam version in the road car, but I think the torque characteristics were such that actually the single cam per bank version of the V12 was actually more suited to a road car. So this engine didn't really see any use other than in the XJ13. And only one of these was built, and it was never raced in anger, sadly. But you can see the shape, the heritage, you can see how it was an evolution of the D-Type and the C-Type before that. Absolutely stunning looking car. One or two people have made their own recreations of these cars, and you do see them out about occasionally, but this is the real deal from 1966. There's a bit more information for you. What a beautiful looking car that is. All these posters up here as well. That's the joy of visiting a museum such as this one, the British Motor Museum at Gaydon. All sorts of memorabilia dotted around, as well as the cars themselves. Of course, those with long memories will remember that Jaguar for a time competed in Formula 1, and this is one of their R1 Formula 1 cars. This was driven by Eddie Irvine in 2000. They didn't do spectacularly well, and it wasn't many years before they pulled out altogether. The team was sold on. Got a diesel-powered race car version of the S-Type there, the later S-Type, and an XFR, the fastest Jaguar. Fastest Jaguar ever made at the time. This one beat the previous record. Whoa. 225 miles an hour. Good lord.
In ideal dry conditions, this was the fastest Le Mans ever run, and mechanical attrition was high. As car after car had trouble, so the Jaguars moved up the leaderboard.
Just have a general look around here at some of the cars here now. Got an MGTF and an MGB Roadster alongside that. A Lotus 7. A TVR, now which one's this? That's the Grand Tourer, 1961. And a very wild looking Rover. It's badged up as a Rover 12. The Revell Special. Started life as a 1935 Rover 12 Saloon. Damaged in 1950 and rebuilt at Revell's garage in East Horsley in Surrey. Wow. Took the car on a tour around Europe between 1953 and 1958. donated to the British Motor Museum collection in 2022. Wow. They did an incredible job rebodying that old P1 saloon into this rakish tourer. Of course, there were skills around like this back in the day at little garages up and down the country where they could do this kind of thing. They would fix and repair pretty much anything. You'll see echoes of various Alvises, Allard, a little bit about the front end of that. It's very similar to some Allards that you see. The Jowett Jupiter looked a bit similar to that as well. So yeah, that was a bang up to date design for 1950, whenever it was that they did it. About 1950 I think they said, didn't they? Yeah, what a great reuse of an old pre-war Rover. Okay, here we got Jensen FF. We've talked about these before. The Ferguson formula, the four-wheel drive Jensen. Very similar looking to an Interceptor, but very different under the skin. Longer nose, squarer front, same big Chrysler V8 engine under the bonnet. Two sets of vents in the front wing, much longer front. And like I say, four-wheel drive, an early form of ABS as well. Now this is a very special Austin 16. These were built just after the Second World War. And there's a clue as to why this car is so special. The millionth Austin, signed by the people who made it. And if you look very closely, it's looking a bit faded, you can still make out some of the names. Of the people who actually built this car, and indeed so many cars, so many Austins following the Second World War. You can see some of these better on the back door here. What a special old car that is. Right, let's keep on going. Let's see what little gems we can spot while we're walking around. Lotus Europa here. It's on the K plate, so about 1971 or thereabouts. Not quite sure what this is. Still none the wiser. A Lightning GT electric sports car from 2008. Morgans. And this, I think this is a Lotus 6, could be a 7. Yeah, the Lotus 6, the Lotus Mark 6, 1953. So the forerunner of the 7. These were powered by the little sidewall Ford engines. Super lightweight. Lightweight was the ethos behind all of Colin Chapman's cars, the race cars and the road cars. Of course, after the war, there was still plenty of aluminium around. There wasn't so much steel. So hence many cars and the caravans and so on were produced after the Second World War out of aluminium, because it was a lot easier to get hold of. And if you look at the wheels, you'll recognise Ford Pop wheels, just like those on our Anglia. Maybe different diameter, but you get the idea. A couple of SUs stuck out of the bonnet there, and hidden away in there will be the little 1172cc Ford side valve engine. It's got a remote gear shift on it. Companies such as Wooler, maybe Aquaplane as well, used to do all sorts of tuning parts for these cars back in the day. And this is how Lotus started out, building little cars just like that. It's a prefect steering wheel. Over here we've got an MGB GT with a split personality. This was used at a motor show. I'm sure the board there will tell us what year motor show it was at. But yeah, the GT was introduced in 1966. The Roadster came along in 62, but this is in 1966 onwards. There you go, 1965, half section, introduced in October 65. There you go. The show car was subsequently upgraded to Mark II specification and displayed at the 67 Turin Motor Show. The central exhibition area often changes year on year. You get different cars move, come and go, and so on. But the cars here on the outside road tend to be more static. Lots of family cars, cars that you probably remember when you were growing up in the 50s, 60s, 1970s, and maybe even a little bit later. So here we've got a Rover P4, next to the first Morris Minor, low light Morris Minor from 1948. Originally these cars were much narrower, as you probably already know, and at the last minute they decided to widen it. So they'd already made a number of the front bumpers for these cars. So rather than make a new batch of bumpers to accommodate the wider width of the production car, these were originally called Mosquito when they were under development. But rather than make a new set of bumpers up, they'd simply chop them in half, move the two halves aside and put a little bit of an infill panel. And that explains why this extra section, this raised hump, appeared in every Morris Minor ever made. That was never originally intended, but that is the width of the extra piece that they installed in the centre of the car, just to make it a little bit wider and just a little bit happier looking, most likely. Again, this was designed by Alikis Agonis, who went on to design the Mini, the 1100 and so on. But this and the Mini were probably his greatest achievements, and this is the first one. First of the line in 1948. I'll just take a gentle stroll around here. Ford Anglia E494A, just like ours. An Armstrong Siddeley over the back there. That's a make you don't often hear of nowadays. A Triumph Mayflower. Oh, and a little Standard. Let's have a quick walk over here. So this is the Sapphire, isn't it? Yeah, with a taller grille, the Sapphire. The Star Sapphire had a slightly shorter grille. A little Standard, no boot lid. I'm guessing it's an 8. Very familiar territory we're on here. The Family 8, yes, that's what we've got. Family 8, 1955 that one. Ours is a 56. Our one at home resides with one of those. Mark 1 Austin A40 in Farina Grey. Well, ours has also got Farina Grey roof. That was a special option at the time. But the standard production car, the car that you could just buy straight off the shelf, your local BMC garage, had the two-tone paint. This is the saloon. The later Countryman had the split rear tailgate arrangement, made it a lot more practical because you could get quite a lot in there. It's quite a boxy design, but you had to feed it in through this little letterbox of a boot lid, which wasn't always great. Pininfarina, of course, designed these. This came out in 1958. We've got an MG Magnette over here, little Vauxhall Viva HA. We do like those. We see those occasionally at some of the classic car shows we go to. That's a 1964 Deluxe. These Magnettes, beautiful car. That's definitely on the short list. If we ever buy something a little bit bigger, it could well be one of those. Let's carry on along here. Got Elvis TE21. Little 1100 over here. Which is this, an Austin or a Morris? It's the Austin on an F plate. So what, late 67 or early 1968, the ADO 16. There's a video, photo compilation video just on those elsewhere on the Old Classic Car channel. We've got an Anglia Super at the back there. The Reliance Regal Supervan 3. This one in Royal Mail livery. There's a Hillman Imp. Scimitar GTE, that's the SE5 version of the GTE. Quite a cool car, 3-litre Ford V6 engine. This is an unusual one, the 1975 Wolseley 2200. At first glance you think that's a Leyland Princess like all the others, but no. Last of the line and the last Wolseley. Look at that little Wolseley grille. That's a rare old car, that is. The Wolseley version of the Princess, the last ever Wolseleys. The 1822 models were dropped after 6 months in the marketplace. This model was therefore the last to bear the Wolseley mark after almost 80 years. All those fabulous Wolseleys that came before. Very rare car. If you've got one of those mouldering away in your barn, members of the Princess Owners Club will be fighting over themselves for it. Okay, and we're here at the back of this particular row. We've got a Mark V Cortina, which would end up being replaced by the Jelly Mould Sierra and an Austin Mini Metro. I almost missed this one, the little Metropolitan. Oh,
not an adult spare.
first ones were badged up as Nash. These were built on behalf of Nash in America by Austin. And then later on these were actually sold as Austins here. This one apparently is a 1958 Austin Metropolitan. There's a bit of background info there.
Is it green?
I don't know.
Look, let's go back down the other side where we can see some wonderful pre-war cars.
Is it 1949? Is it a family car?
Okay, hello. Here we've got a Wolseley 14 police car. And if you, like I say, if you frequent Talking Pictures TV channel on Freeview and elsewhere, no doubt, you'll see many films set in the sort of early 1950s, and you'll see the boys in blue racing around the streets of London, usually in these magnificent old Wolseleys. Because by this point in time, they were based very much on Morris. It's basically a Morris body shell, but with a different front end. And we've got an MG. Is this an SA or a VA? I'm guessing it's an SA. Slightly bigger, yep. SA, 1936. A little Vauxhall 10 over the back there. Riley. Which one are we looking at here? 9 Kestrel, 1933. There's a little Vauxhall over the back there. CA, that's a North Welsh registered Vauxhall. Very nice too. A standard 10-12 Speedline, 1934. 2-door, very streamlined styling. The tail really drops away at the back there. So many coach builders around back in those days, taking a standard chassis, no pun intended, and rebodying it in their own particular way. An MG here, an NB Magnet. Just go on the back of this Trojan, I think that is. A 12.6 Harley, 1932. 12.6 Harley Deluxe Saloon. Very handsome car indeed. Got the little extra trafficators on here, the signals. There's no flashing turn signals in those days. There's a standard at the back here, a standard 9, Teignmouth. So look, 1929. Oh, fabric bodied as well. So all this is fabric covering over the body structure beneath. Big old Morris here, a Cowley, 1932 Cowley. Let's just go and have another look at that. I think it's a Trojan, pretty sure it's a Trojan. Yeah, a Trojan Tourer, 1924.
We've done 3 primaries now.
Super cheap car, that of the 1920s. Look at those wheels. Looks more like something you might see on a Charabang. Solid rubber tyres as well, no pneumatic tyres on these old girls. That'll shake your teeth out, that would. Yeah, what a great little car that is. And there's just a rear view of that Austin 12.6 Harley. So what a handsome pre-war car that is. 6-cylinder engine, fairly small capacity, but 6-cylinder engine, so that would sound really nice. This Austin here dates to 1907, incredibly. Super original interior in here. People are invited to sit in and have their photo taken. And clearly that seat squad has seen many derrieres over the years. 1907. Just think when that first hit the road, it would be mixing it with horse-drawn carriages, carts, unmade roads, chauffeur-driven. The owner sat in the back and the chauffeur responsible for maintaining the motor car and putting it away in the motor house at the end of the day. You needed a few bob behind you if you were going to run one of these in the early 1900s. Of course, in the 1920s, when cars like the Austin 7 came along, it sort of opened up the world of the motor car to a much wider audience. But these days, 1907, which was the Edwardian era, yeah, it was very much the preserve of the well-to-do members of society. Unfortunately, because they bought these cars, it enabled cars such as the Austin 7 a few years later to actually go into production. A lovely speedometer there, a Jones speedometer. Great name. Look at this 1918 Vauxhall D-Type Army staff car. Wow. What an incredible car that is. Super original interior as well. Hopefully the camera's picking this up. It is a bit dark and gloomy back here, and this camera isn't great in low light, but I hope you're getting the idea anyway. What a magnificent double-decker bus. Just like that little Trojan. And solid rubber tyres, none of this pneumatic business here yet. London General Omnibus Company Limited. 1923 AEC S-Type bus. I'm quite partial to vintage caravans as well, and here we've got a Winchester of 1935. An incredible machine. Leaded windows, proper glass, leaded windows, heavy, heavy caravan. Proper wood fittings, none of this MDF and plastic. Proper quality handles, look at the size of those. Beautiful, beautiful thing. Several more really early motor cars here. We've got the Wolseley Stellite 1919 Rover Imperial motorcycle, because of course many car manufacturers started out in life producing motorcycles. This is an Albion Tourer of 1909. What do we have here? Fun little three-wheeler with a seat on the front. Well, there's a seat here for the driver, and a seat on the front for the passenger. So what's this? Is this? This is the Riley Popular 4 car, 1907. Wow. A great collection of cars, really early cars as well as much later machines. Another towering Austin there. All sorts here. What's this one here? With a Rover, an 8-horse, 1904. The oldest surviving Rover, in fact. We're getting older and older and older as the timeline on the wall tracks around. Like I say, at the other end there we saw that Mark V Cortina and the Metro right round the corner there, but this is where it all starts out, this particular display. 1901 Albion dog cart. What do we have on the end here with tiller steering? None of these newfangled steering wheels or windscreens or anything like that, none of these modern frivolities. We've got the 1899 Wolseley 3.5 horsepower voiturette, the first four-wheel Wolseley car. So this is the first model Wolseley ever produced, and at the other end there of course we saw that Princess, the 1822, the very last Wolseley. Just think of all the cars that came between as well. There's the gear selection arrangements. I don't know much about veteran cars, It must be certainly fun to drive. That's nice. An 1899 Riley motorised tricycle. Over here we've got a gathering of MG speed record cars. This is quite a historic display. EX179 from 1954, a speed record car built for George Easton. And this one over here, let's just have a quick shifty at this board over here, 1938 speed record car. That one enclosed driver's position. This car dates to 1957, driven by the likes of Sterling Moss and Phil Hill. There's Moss. Incredible car. Incredible bravery to get behind the wheel of these things and put your foot flat to the floor. Got some film cars here. What's this? The Judge Dredd Land Rover, Lady Penelope's car there, based on a Thunderbird if I remember right. Some more familiar cars here, cars you more often see here on the Old Classic Car channel, such as the Austin Healey. We've got Jackie Stewart, is that a Matra or a Tyrrell? One of the two. A Ford DFV engine sat in the back there, as so many Grand Prix cars did in the late 60s and well into the 1970s and beyond, evolutions of that engine. Rally Minis 33 EJB, this is a very famous Mini Monte Carlo rally car. Paddy Hopkirk and Co. 1965 Monte Mini AJB 44B, Morris Cooper S. Got a Cooper T51 race car there, much modified Sprite. This is Isago, this is lightweight special. Same Isagonis that went on to design the Morris Minor and the Mini. But after the war he was quite keen on a bit of hill climbing and he built this car for himself. And it's still here now. That would look good in the back of Big Dodge. And a Metro 6R4. Big Bentley. TR, is this a TR7 or TR8 perhaps? Tony Pond, old rally driver. Early Mini, Austin Mini, 1959, Downton tuned. So as well as Cooper. Cooper was the best known of the Mini tuners, but there was Downton as well. This has got some Downton tuning parts on it. Look at this, there were lots of adventurers around in the 1950s, and this Austin A90 Westminster was chosen for a particularly epic journey from the North Cape, which is the most northerly point of Norway, to Cape Town at the southernmost point of Africa between July and October 1955, 17,500 miles. What an incredible car. I love this sort of bull bar arrangement on the front here. Just a bit of iron bent to shape and drilled and mounted on the front wings there. Such a historic old Austin. Well, that gives us an idea of the journey. There's a nice 6-cylinder engine under there. It's left-hand drive because of course most of the roads it would have been driven on, people drove on the right. Another epic adventure here. London, Cape Town, and then back to London again. What car is this? An Austin 20 of 1922. And there's the history of this incredible car. Bought second hand for £33 by Mr. Philby in 1932, and he drove to Cape Town and back, completing a round journey of 37,000 miles without serious incident. And Austin bought the car back as a splendid example of Austin dependability. What a brilliant car. Who doesn't love a big Healy, the Austin Healy 3000? This one, 1959. Rallied. There we go. Originally registered SJB 471, usually driven by the two brothers Don and Earl Morley. Yeah, proper car, proper bit of rally car equipment there. That's really, really cool. Of course, the A35 roof vent in the roof. There's the Only Fools and Horses Ford Capri, Del Boy's Ford Capri. Here it is, alive and well at Gaydon. Still with the original Cirque number plates on the front. The Reliant Supervan 3 based on the Regal Saloon. Is this a real one? Several vans were used during the 10-year run of Only Fools and Horses. This is one of the Regals. It's a Supervan 3 supplied to the BBC by Action Vehicles, but it wasn't the van's only starring role. Oh, it appeared in Mr. Bean as well. The blue paint. So this is a little blue one that used to get tipped over by Mr. Bean while he was driving around in his Mini. So that's a very historic TV car, that is. There's the original wooden styling buck for the Bristol 411. TR3A. I'm not going to be able to feature every single vehicle here at the Gaydon Museum, but we'll do our best. As always, this is a Morris Minor, 4-seat version of the pre-war Morris Minor. And around it, many of its rivals, the little Austin 7, the Chummy. That's a very early one, 1923, with a straight-up rear door edge, which I've pointed out on many Chummies before now in previous videos, but the later ones had a slightly diagonal rear door edge. Got one of the twin cam racers there, based on the Austin 7. Another one there. Morris 8. The super original Austin 7 Chummy here. I'm so glad this one's been preserved in its original paint and not improved with fresh paint. That is just beautiful. Exactly how cars like that should be preserved, in my humble opinion. Quite a few Austin 7s here, including this, the swallow-bodied car. This is the fixed head, the saloon. They did the open top version as well. Swallow was founded by William Lyons and William Walmsley up in Blackpool. Between them they formed the company. William Lyons continued with it. William Walmsley left after a while, and then it became, in later years, when William Lyons wanted to move on from just coach building other people's chassis, as is the case with this Austin 7 here, he went on and of course founded Jaguar, well, the company that ended up becoming Jaguar. He set up SS Cars in the 1930s, and that was renamed Jaguar Cars after the war. Jaguar pre-war being one of their model names, but it became the name for the company itself following the Second World War, because I think SS had certain connotations that perhaps weren't appropriate for a motor car company coming out of the Second World War. Not just another Austin 7, this is the BMW Dixie, the licensed built version of the Austin 7. Of course, this was home to much of the nuclear defence, the deterrent, the V-bomber fleet in the sort of 50s and into the 1960s. And you had the Victor, the Vickers Valiant and the Avro Vulcan. But I think it was Valiants that were based here in the main. We've got a few other bits of aviation memorabilia here as well, remembering those days of Royal Air Force Gaydon. This is Morris's own on-site fire appliance. No prizes for guessing what that's based on. And of course the Austin J40. These were produced in South Wales by miners, former miners who had to retire from work due to health reasons. So Austin set up a facility where they actually manufactured these little J40 pedal cars using steel offcuts. These are offcuts of steel from the main production line at Longbridge. So that's the J40. It was produced for many, many years. And below it is Joy 1. This was the prototype. They only made one of these based on the Austin 8. And this is what was built as a proposal for an Austin pedal car. And of course the Austin 8 was on its way out by this point in time, so they decided to do one which looked a bit more like the contemporary A40 Devon. As a result, Joy 1 is a one-off. And what a beautiful little thing it is. And this is the Atco Trainer. This has a small engine in it, a bit like that of a lawnmower. And the idea of these was to sort of teach young people the rudimentary basics of driving. The Atco Junior Safety First Trainer. However, that is the one that I would like to take home. Here's one of the late Queen's own Rover P5B saloons, JGY 280. It's a 1971 car. She was often to be seen driving this around herself, and if it's the car I'm thinking of, it's got some pretty groovy tinted green wing mirrors to match the green coachwork. There we go. How cool are they? Oh, a very historic Rover indeed. And while we're on the subject of Rover, we've got this specially built Land Rover here, which was used for ceremonial occasions in 1953, 86-inch Series 1. Tickford-bodied station wagon version of the early Land Rover, the Series 1. Don't see many of these princesses around anymore. Looks like a car of the early 1950s, but this one was built in 1968. They were only built in relatively small numbers. People such as the mayor and local dignitaries would be seen driving around in cars like this, coach built to request. 4-litre limousine. Yeah, a substantial number were used by the royal household over the years. In 52 the shear line was replaced by the Van den Plas Princess limousine. Well, we've had a quick scoot around the main museum area. I'm just going to nip up these stairs, just have a quick look from up there, and then we will go and inspect the reserve collection. There's a Pathfinder pedal car. Those were also produced by Austin, built alongside the J40s, but they only made those for a couple of years, about 1947 to 49, something like that. Maybe they didn't sell very well, and they went out of production, but now those are hugely sought after and worth big, big bucks. Quite a collection of Vauxhalls up here. A beautiful car here. What's this? A T-type Melton Golfers Coupe of 1930. Spectacular. All sorts. A Bedford CA. We didn't see a CA van outside when we were looking around the vintage lorry event, which we were also here for today. But there's one in here. I think a lot of these vehicles are from Vauxhall's own heritage collection, which I think may have been disbanded, or at least is no longer with Vauxhall. Hence all these incredible Vauxhalls up here. Wow. Just have a quick scoot round. Cavalier Mark 1, Vauxhall Victor, the FE Victor, the Viscount, the luxury Viscount. Got a Cresta here, a PB Cresta, 1965. We've got an FB Victor Estate. What a treat. F-Type Vauxhall Victor, the sort of Series 2, fairly late F-Type. A PA Velox, these in the Cresta, about the 6-cylinder engine. Some later machines over there. VX220, and on the end here, an L-Type Vauxhall Wyvern of 1949. Wow, I wasn't expecting to see all these up here, and it's a left-hand drive Wyvern as well. That must be quite unusual now. A huge radio aerial, the antenna there on the pillar. Oh, interesting car. This gives you a good overview of what you might see when you come here to Gaydon for the British Motor Museum. There's another one I've never seen before, and presumably from the same Vauxhall collection. This really wild looking car, but what it is, I'm not quite sure, so let's go and have a look at the board. So this is the 1970 Vauxhall SRV concept. SRV, Styling Research Vehicle.
Yes.
All these car makers, so few of them still around. Right, well we're in the building now for the reserve collection here down at Gaydon, so we're going to have a quick scoot around here. There's all sorts of prototypes and one-offs in here, so we probably can't go into too much detail, but we will have a look around and just highlight some of the most interesting cars. We've got a sectioned Mini there and a sectioned Austin Allegro. So is that the Allegro 3 with the 4 headlights? I've been here before quite a while ago, but I don't remember that here. So it's always worth revisiting these places from time to time because you just don't know what you're going to see. There's that Group C race car down there and the D-Type alongside that. So that's the Jaguar Daimler, I think, Heritage Trust's workshop area. That's where many of the cars are worked on here. The remains of this Mini Clubman were found in the old tunnels at the Austin factory at Longbridge, and it was dragged out, straightened up a little bit, and is now on display here. There's all sorts of early cars here. Like I say, we can't really go looking in too much detail in this video. We've got a sectioned MGA here. Many vintage cars. Austin, Vauxhall there. Got some nice little lorry at the back. Let's see if we can have a bit of a closer look at the old lorry, just to see what it is. Got a very early Daimler here. You can see the fluted radiator there. And this is a Morris, probably 1920s. Very rudimentary, not much in the way of weather protection for drivers back in those days. I mean, it's got a roof, I suppose. No sides here. So if the rain was blowing horizontally, you would be getting wet. Yeah, Morris Commercial Cars Limited. Sectioned engines everywhere. The Humber Hawk Mark 6 engine, 1954. How about this for a bit of diagnostic equipment? The Krypton electronic engine tune-up. How about that? The Octopus Electrical Service. That's just a work of industrial art in its own right. Look at those gauges. Look at the size of those. Wow. 105E Ford engine, again sectioned, probably on display at a motor show, Earl's Court, somewhere like that. That's what that would have been done for. They used to section many engines. Got a Wolseley 680 there, the police car. All sorts of cars. I think this is a Rover we've got here. Pretty sure that's a Rover. Let's have a quick look at the radiator. Yep. No badge on it, but that is a Rover, that shape. The radiator there, that's definitely a Rover. Got a Reliant SS1. Little Wolseley, so that's a Wolseley. Which one's that? The Hornet, I think, or the Wasp? Yeah. Big Austin 6. The Austin A90 Atlantic. That's the fixed head version. They did the open top car as well. Rover P3. There's that Wolseley 680 police car I saw before. The Morris Oxford MO. That's the revised MO. The very first cars. The bonnet curved round down here. Many people used to crack their head open on that very sharp corner, so they revised it a little bit so the bonnet stops there and this bit stays down there. That's the difference between the early and the slightly later MOs. A Maestro. So many cars. That's a standard. Which one? That's a standard Ensign. That's the most basic version of the Phase 3 Vanguards. The Ensign, very pared back specification, but quite rare now. Got the Prefect, the Sit-Up and Beg E493A Prefect. Got MGYA, I think, the Y-type saloon. Got the Austin Champ, Austin A30. What's that over there? Is it a Riley? That's the Wolseley 1500, the black one there. There's that Ensign again. Very rare survivor, that one. Got a very special ceremonial Land Rover, Moggy convertible. I did used to remember what this one was. It's another idea by Rover. What's the registration? 3411AC. I think again this was an idea of producing a slightly upmarket car to sit alongside the Land Rover, in between the Land Rover and the P4 saloons. A forward control truck there. So many rare cars in here. There just isn't room in the main museum to fit all those in there, hence this reserve collection that you can also walk around. A Mark III Mini, Triumph Vitesse, 1965. Very tasty car. Riley Elf, the Austin A60 Cambridge. Austin minivan in the livery of the Cooper Car Company. Vanden Plas. I think it's a 3 litre, I suspect. We'll have a look at the back. That's usually where the giveaway is. No, it's the 4 litre R with the horizontal rear lights and a slightly different rear roof. That's the 4 litre R with a Rolls-Royce developed engine. Very nice indeed. There's a good old Morris Marina. There's a proposal for a sort of a Rover stroke Elvis collaboration that didn't come to anything. It was based around the structure of the P6. Rover 3 litre coupe. Straight 6 engine in those before they put the Buick V8 in. This was an experimental car, the triplex car I think it was. Moggy van, Morris Traveller. And an Austin or Morris 1800 rally car, a works rally car, alongside the marina here. Quite a few later Land Rover special cars there, first of lines, end of lines, prototypes, one-offs and so on. Viva HC, we see these from time to time at some of the shows we go to. Kind of maxi rally car here, another one of the works cars, XMO 412H, Daily Mirror World Cup Rally, London to Mexico. Tucked away here, Mark II Triumph GT6, 2 litre straight 6, very similar engine to that of the Vitesse. These had the fancy Rotoflex rear suspension which did tame the somewhat wild handling characteristics of the earlier cars. Independent rear suspension, done on the cheap really, and it could be a little bit wayward if you backed off in the middle of a fast corner, but the Rotoflex back on these did work a little bit better. We've got on the Austin 1800 alongside that one of the Land Crabs. Another proposed version based on a Dolomite, a prototype. All sorts of cars here. It really is worth popping in. If you ever find yourself in the Midlands, it is well worth popping in to here, the British Motor Museum, because they have a collection of cars like no other. There are so many one-offs and prototypes here, as well as your regular cars that you could buy at your local garage. It's so worthwhile coming here. This video really is just a bit of a walkout, just to give you a flavour of the kind of exhibits you might see here. We've got some safety research vehicles here. Of course, this one's based obviously on the Mini, and this one, a slightly challenging looking vehicle here, SRV Safety Research Vehicle 5, is based on the 1100 or 1300, the ADO 16. And this thing flipped up here, this sort of tubular affair. It was the idea, I think, was to sort of catch the pedestrians so they didn't go under the front wheels of the car. The safety research vehicle here based on the Marina. It's not really a looker, but that wasn't the point. These were all development cars. It's incredible, they didn't just get scrapped and they were no longer needed. We've got a 3.5 litre saloon here, so we had the Rover 3 litre before. This is the P5B, one of the big Triumphs estates, the 2.5S twin carb 2.5 litre engine, 6 cylinders of course. This is that safety research vehicle based on the Marine. Look at all this extra padding around the inside of the windows. Austin 1300 SRV5. This was a proposal to do a posh Vanden Plas version of the Princess. Didn't come to anything, but yeah, you recognise that grille from such cars as the little 1300 Vanden Plas. Yeah, interesting. Mini. The Triumph 1500 it says. Looks a bit like a Lada Samara. That was the Triumph SD2 prototype. There's the blurb on that one. As with so many of these ideas that BL came up with, they just didn't have the money to fund the research and the development of these things in their entirety, so they just got put to one side. But it's such a shame because clearly they had so many ideas. cars everywhere you look. I'm not even sure what that one is. Let's go and have a look at it's a little 4-door, 5-door hatch. Let's go and have a look, see what it is. Let's have a look at the information board, see what it says down here. The LC10 prototype hatchback of 1978. That's the one we've just been looking at. Here we've got a Maxi, MG Metro, SD1 Rover, a Honda Prelude. It's an early one. Somewhat modified Mini, and a revised version of the TR7. Who wouldn't buy one of these? Look at this proposal for an open top version of the good old Austin A30. This is a very early A30 that's been used as a basis for this one. This is based on the AS3 Austin A30. You can tell those because they got these separate little winged badges above the main chrome grille. Those weren't ever standard on the AS3. What a neat little car that is. Note the circular speedometer, that's another thing that was unique to the AS3, the early Austin A30s. The later A30s had the sort of slightly different shaped instrument cluster as they put on A35s and the A40 Mark 1. But this is based on a very early AS3, but much modified, as you can see. And usually the later A30s, the AS4s onwards and the A35s, the filler was on the rear panel here, but on the AS3s it was there on the rear corner. But I suppose if you put it there, you could park either side of the petrol pump and you could reach in to fill up your tank. That's probably a better idea really, but this is just such a bonny little car. A little 2-door ragtop version of the Austin A30. These have probably been lifted from, I don't know, the A70. I would have thought the A70 Hereford, perhaps, something like that. Yet more special cars here in the collection. Got an Ital Estate, I think that was the last Morris. So many cars. The Rover CCV. That's quite a rakish looking thing, isn't it? That would have taken the fight to BMW and the likes if only they put it into production. Various development cars down there. I think this was the last ever Austin. Montego, signed by the people that built it, just like that Austin 16 down in, well, over in the main exhibition area. So this one will be preserved forever here. More special vehicles up here. Land Rovers, loads of Land Rovers and Range Rovers. Look at this tracked one here. If you really want to know every car that's in here, it's probably worth looking at the main website for the British Motor Museum, because I'm sure they've got the full SP on everything that's here. It's SP small print, all the details. Range Rovers, Rover 100, final evolution of the Metro concept, P38 Rangy, police spec, Freelander there. Another one there, covered with signatures. Some early discos, discoveries. That's a Series 2. Your Nick Sunshine. Just like the one we used to have. Ours was on an 04 plate, one of the facelifted Disco 2s. Ours had the V8 engine with LPG on it. Most of them seem to be diesel, the ones that have survived now. The chassis used to rot like crazy on these. The rear of the chassis used to go on these facelifted cars, the Series 2s. Series 1s, it tended to be the bodies that fell apart. And on these Series 2s, it was usually the back end of the chassis that disintegrated. The body wasn't too bad usually, although saying that mine was starting to go. Yeah, what a treat to be able to walk around this incredible collection of cars and other vehicles. Like I say, this is well worth popping in to visit. Stunning pre-war Rover here in this bit of a workshop area that we've got in the corner. Minis large and small. And we're back here again. I could spend all day just walking around this collection alone, let alone the main bit of the museum. So if you're going to come here, make sure you set aside most of the day to have a proper look around, because half an hour isn't going to cut it. Not here, not with all these really unusual cars. These are just crazy cars. If you saw the recent video I did at Weston Park, I had the chat with the owner of a drophead coupe version of the Austin A90 Atlantic, and he demonstrated the power windows and the power hood, which was pretty revolutionary for a British car. Alright, a British car designed with America in mind, but nevertheless, that was pretty whizzy stuff for a late 40s British car. That's that fantastic Wolseley 680. Well, I hope that whistle-stop tour of the British Motor Museum here down at Gaydon, Junction 12 off the M40, if you want to find your way here. It's just a couple of minutes away from the M40. This is well worth the visit, whether you like pre-war cars like these, post-war cars, or even cars into the 70s, 1980s, and newer than that. You will find something here of interest, I can guarantee it. Wow, look at that. I didn't notice this before when we came around. Beautiful Rover Meteor. What an incredible looking car that is. If I hadn't seen that badge, I never would have guessed that was a Rover. This is the chassis for the Austin A40, the Devon and the Dorset of the late 1940s. Floor change on these earlier cars. A 4-cylinder engine, forerunner, the precursor to the B series engine, 1200cc. And that engine will also see service in the A40 Somerset that replaced the Devon, and the A40 Sports, the sporty car based on the A40 running gear. That car there in the workshop is the Marauder. That was built by people who used to work for Rover. It's based on the Rover P4. It's like a sporting GT open top car based around the P4 platform. And that's there in the workshop area. We can't get through to it. In the background you can just see the back end, the engine cover raised on the Rover BRM, the gas turbine Le Mans car that we were talking about before. Like I said, that used to share the workshop space with Big Dodger, and it's being restored quite a few years ago. Right now, we are going to have a quick look at the Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust collection, also here at Gaydon. Here we have a Bruff Superior SS80 with the Swallow sidecar. That's what William Lyon started out, him and William Walmsley, building sidecars, and they started clothing various chassis, Austin 7, and then after that Standards and all sorts of different cars before they went into producing their own cars, and of course later Jaguar. All manner of historic Jaguars here. Lovely XK120, a broad-speed Jaguar V12 race car, fixed coupe, driven at over 100 miles an hour for 7 days and 7 nights. Very historic XK120, this one. Beautiful car. XJS, TWR prepared, V12 XJS race car. Tom Walkinshaw, TWR, Tom Walkinshaw Racing, Win Percy. as well as one of the drivers. SS, Jaguar, Mark 9. This was Sir William Lyons' own personal transport, this particular Series 1 XJ6 on a G, quite an early one. The XJ6 Series 1 came out in 1968. The very plush V12 Jaguars here, the XJ12. I think this was the Queen Mother's car, a Vanden Plas saloon, her HM Queen Mother's replacement for a 1955 Mark 7. I used to have one of those in my early 20s, a standard XJ12L, 1972. Right, so anyway, we've got a Series 2 V12 there, XJ12, and a Series 3 car, E-types. That's probably the last of the Series 3s, the V12s. We've got a Series 1 77RW, that's the famous Geneva Motor Show car. An X300, a 6-cylinder car, that was a replacement for the XJ40. Got the X350, that was the aluminium bodied car. Some later cars here, the Daimler DS420. Daimler here. Some of these are one-offs like this. The Daimler, I think this is the Corsica. This was a proposal for a convertible version of the Daimler, the X300 based Daimler. Two-door coupe version of the XJ40. Of course, there was the two-door Series 2 XJs in the 1970s, and they did dabble with the idea of doing a two-door version of the XJ40, and this was the result. What a beautiful car that is. What a shame they didn't make that. And as well as the coupe, we've got this, the estate version of an XJ40, complete with perspex sort of plexiglass bonnet, so you can see all the engine there. There you go, AJ6 engine, 3.9 litres, or just under 4 litre. It's a polished up aluminium bodied X350, it's a show car. Some later Jaguars here. I forget what this was a particular concept car. What's that one then? The R06 concept car of 2003. Various other development cars around here too. That's the XK180, if memory serves. The F-type concept car, a successor to the XK180. What a beauty that is. Although it's fairly modern, we don't do modern cars here on the channel, but that is one sleek looking car. I like this nod to the E-type with the bonnet, the rear edge of the bonnet there, and you've got a bit of bulkhead there, and then the leading edge of the door, but that's a nod to the E-type. Bit of a development mule here. Looks like a reject from Knight Rider TV series. With the proposal there. It's an interesting looking car. Got the XJ220 here. Of course, that was meant to have the V12 engine, but when it actually made production, it had the V6, very similar to the engine in the Metro 6R4. Mark II, of course, the 3.8. Got the Mark 1. That'll be a 3.4, I think. They were never actually called Mark 1s back in the day, but it was the 3.4 or the 2.4, yeah. 3.4. And then the Mark II came along to differentiate the early cars, because the later ones were also available with 2.4 or 3.4. Those are the Mark IIs, and these are retrospectively called the Mark 1s. Got some later Jaguars there, but I'll have a look for some more oldies in this fantastic collection of old Jaguars and Daimlers. So that's a 2.5 litre V8 powered car, and this is the Jaguar S-Type, which is a revised version really of the Mark II, loosely, slightly different front, independent rear suspension. And that would go on to form the basis of the 420, the Daimler 420 Sovereign and the Jaguar 420. And after that, the XJ6. A bit more F1 goodness there. Looks like an XF body, maybe. We've got an XK140 drophead coupe now, back to proper old Jaguars. Lovely jubbly. Next to that we have an XK150 drophead coupe. They're very similar looking at first glance, but very different when you look at the details of them. The door line was very different on the 120 and the 140, the way it cuts down there. Whereas on the 150, it ran straight along. Lovely jubbly. We got the Daimler here, the SP250, or the Dart as it was unofficially called. That shares the 2.5 litre V8 engine with the Mark II shaped Daimler over there. A 2+2 E-Type here, V12. So it's a 5.3 litre. You could get the manual or the auto box in those. The V12 saloons were all automatic. Got the XJ SC, like the open top XJ. Princess Diana's cabriolet, apparently. Facelifted XJS there. Another XJS, the full convertible at the end of the line here. So many wonderful Jaguars. Well, that's a very historic car. Look up 77RW. And there are some very interesting stories to be told about how that was delivered to the Geneva Motor Show. So we got one of the first and the last of the E-Type line. Very different cars. These were much sportier. These were much more boulevard, more of a GT. This was more of a sports car, stroke GT, but this was definitely a GT, the Grand Tourer. And very well suited to the job it was as well. People did unfairly compare them, I think, to these early cars, which were beautiful cars. But I think these are great in their own right now. Right, let's go and have a look. We've got some more swallow body cars over here. So like I said, William Leyland and William Walmsley, they started out after doing sidecars, well they carried on doing sidecars, but then they branched out into bodying cars. So this is based on the standard Austin 7 chassis, but the coachwork is all of their own design. This is the open top car. And then we've got a closed top version here of the Austin 7 Swallow. Beautiful, beautiful car. We've got another swallow bodied car here. I'm not quite sure what make it is. What is it? It's a Swift, 1931 Swift. What a beauty that is. Next to the Swift we have an SS1. Beautiful coachwork again by Swallow and William Lyons, later Sir William Lyons of course. These were based on standard chassis and engine. But it wasn't long before William Lyons really wanted to move away from being reliant on other people for the supply of the chassis, the engines and the running gear and so on. Little Wolseley there. This is the SS2, so I've got the SS1, which is a much larger coupe, much more imposing car, very, very swish indeed. And the SS2 was altogether smaller, much, much smaller, more compact little car. No less pretty, but quite a lot smaller. SS2 coupe, one of only 275 coupes built in 1933. Now, next to this SS100, which is a magnificent car in its own right, we have this, perhaps the most famous XK120 of all, registration Nub 120. This was a famous rally car, Jaguar XK120 rally car of the early 1950s, complete with its original Rally Des Alpes plate on the front there. This was driven by Ian Appleyard, if I remember correctly. A very historic car in the history of Jaguar, especially post-war Jaguars. Nub 120, very famous car indeed. There's the matching rally plate on the back as well. Automobile Club Marseille Provence. These early cars were aluminium bodied, and usually the giveaway for those is these separate side light housings on tops of the front wings. When they switched to steel bodied cars, because originally when they brought out the 120 they never thought they were going to produce them in large numbers, but they proved so popular both here and especially in the United States that they had to sort of increase ramp up production and so on. I think that's probably one of the reasons that they switched to steel body panels. But these early cars were aluminium bodied, and like I say, this separate housing on top of the wing is usually a sign that you're looking at one of the earlier cars. These were introduced in 1948 and proved to be the debut of the XK straight six engine. This is the car that the engine first went on sale to the public in. Twice winner of the Alpine Rally, 1950 and 1951. What a car. Huge racing spec, fast flow fill in that there, real wide diameter so you could really chuck the fuel in quickly. You didn't want to be wasting time refilling with petrol. Anyway, I hope that was of interest, this quick look around the British Motor Museum here at Gaydon and the Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust collection. It's certainly been a great time having a look around all these fantastic cars. All the cars upstairs, especially in the reserve collection as well, there were some pretty special cars in there as well, and of course this wonderful collection of old Jaguars. I've combined this visit with a visit to the classic and vintage commercial vehicle show here at Gaydon, and the video for that should already be on the channel. I'll publish this one a little bit later in the year, I think. Well, what a treat it's been to see all these lovely old cars in here. Thank you very much for watching. Please check out the rest of the channel while you're here. There'll be many, many more videos along before too long. So, bye for now.